US President Donald Trump will urgently address the US Congress with an important statement which, without exaggeration, the whole world will be watching online. Trump himself stated that the theme of his speech is America at 250 years, strong, prosperous, and respected. The Democrats, of course, have announced a boycott of the US president's speech in Congress and are calling their supporters to the National Mall for a rally. It's also worth noting that Trump will deliver his address to Congress at a tense moment for his presidency. Approval ratings are falling, concerns about a possible war with Iran are growing, Americans are suffering from the rising cost of living, and meanwhile, the November congressional elections are approaching. And now experts are viewing his speech as an attempt to convince voters to keep the Republican majority in the House of Representatives and the Senate. But the Democrats have definitely changed. They are using the most toxic topic to criticize Donald Trump. The work of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security is practically paralyzed due to partisan disagreements in Congress over the aggressive anti-immigrant policy of ICE, whose agents have already shot 2 American citizens in Minneapolis. In addition, Trump still hasn't managed to close the issue of Jeffrey Epstein's documents, and it's obvious that he will be speaking at the UN. It's a very, very tense moment. But, importantly, there have already been information leaks. What will the American president talk about? And in addition, there have already been official statements from the White House about what will be announced in the address to Congress. My name is Alexei Pichi. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start this episode, I ask you to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and write any comment under this episode. In addition, subscribe to my Telegram channel, Peachy News. The link to it is in the description of this video. There we publish breaking news as it comes in. So, it will already be 4 a.m. in Kiev when Donald Trump officially addresses the US Congress with his annual speech, in which it is customary to announce the results of his work and plans for the future. This time the address is especially important because in November of this year there will be midterm elections in Congress and the Republican majority could be seriously shaken. So, what should we expect from Donald Trump's speech? Experts note that Trump will speak at a tense moment for his presidency because his approval ratings are falling, concerns about a possible war with Iran are growing, Americans are really suffering from the rising cost of living, and on top of that, there are the upcoming congressional elections and so on. And by the way, the approval ratings are really going down, although not as drastically as the Democrats might have hoped. 6 out of 10 Americans, including a significant portion of Republicans, believe that President Donald Trump has become more unpleasant with age. This is shown by a new Reuters Ipsos poll. And this 6-day poll concluded literally on Monday, February 23rd, just a day before the 79-year-old US president is set to address Congress. Overall, 61% of respondents said that Trump has become unpredictable with age. This is how he was described by 89% of Democrats, 30% of Republicans, and 64% of independent voters. But, and this is a very important point, Donald Trump's overall popularity has hardly changed in recent months. About 40% of respondents in the new poll approved of his work as president, which is 2% higher than at the beginning of February. Although Trump began his second term in the White House with a significantly higher approval rating of 47%, his approval since April, when he started introducing these tariffs and duties, has remained at about the same level, fluctuating plus or minus 1 to 2% from the current level. Therefore, it can be said that his ratings are not really dropping. That is, yes, if you look from the beginning of the year until today, meaning the beginning of 2025, then of course they have dropped by 7%, but not as critically as some might have hoped. But it's worth noting here that this last poll was essentially built around the age of politicians. In the US, 79% of respondents agreed with the statement that elected officials in Washington are too old to represent the majority of Americans. The average age of members of the US Senate is about 64 years, and for the House of Representatives, it's 58 years. And Trump returned to the White House in January 2025 at the age of 78, becoming, by the way, the oldest president in history on the day of inauguration. Since then, he has actively announced a new policy direction and proposals, introducing high tariffs on imports from dozens of countries and deploying federal agents in America to combat illegal immigration. And now, in his address to Congress, Trump will be able to try to convince voters to keep the Republican majority in the House of Representatives and the Senate. And to show that, well, he's not that old himself. Yes, 79 years old, but his mind is still sharp, as he likes to say. And here, analysts predict that Trump will be among the oldest in the Senate, where the average age of its members is quite high, and he himself will be one of the oldest. At the same time, fresh data shows that the economy has slowed down more than expected, while price growth has accelerated. But Trump insists otherwise, saying, "I don't understand what's happening, but according to my data, the economy is growing." White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stated that a significant part of Trump's message will be devoted to the economy and the achievements of the U.S. armed forces abroad, including an operation targeting Iran's nuclear facilities. In addition, Leavitt also noted that the president will place the blame for the housing affordability crisis on Joe Biden's administration. Quote, President Trump will lay out arguments for why he and the Republicans are better suited to address and continue addressing the housing affordability crisis created by the Biden administration. Quote, PD needs. That is, here Leavitt is clearly saying that yes, he will be campaigning, basically saying vote for the Republicans in November. Well, and that's funny. So, where there are successes, that's thanks to Trump, and where there are failures, it's all Biden's fault. Well, that's classic politics. As you can see, American politics is no different from Ukrainian politics, for example. At the same time, the work of the US Department of Homeland Security is practically paralyzed due to partisan disagreements in Congress over ICE's aggressive anti-immigration policies, whose agents shot 2 Americans in Minneapolis. In addition, it's interesting, well, most likely Trump won't bring up this issue, but it's definitely out in the open. It's the topic of Jeffrey Epstein's documents. And Trump, who openly craved the Nobel Peace Prize and created his own peace council, seems to be moving in the opposite direction, toward a military conflict with Iran, because the naval fleet has been moved to the Middle East and plans for regime change in the Islamic Republic are being developed. And here we come to the most interesting part. In my opinion, the speech in Congress may give Donald Trump the opportunity to publicly present arguments for military intervention for the first time, or to explain why he will not do it. So today, obviously, he will announce what will happen next with Iran. 2 administration officials speaking on condition of anonymity told Reuters that Trump will definitely address plans regarding Tehran in his speech. It is also reported that White House aides and Republican Party advisors asked Trump to focus on Americans' economic concerns. Trump's victory in 2024 was largely based on his aggressive promises to lower the cost of living. But public opinion polls show that voters have not yet seen this happen. And now comes a truly remarkable admission. One of the White House representatives told Reuters the following, quote, Trump will declare victory in the economy, which is unlikely to find support among congressmen and Republicans who will try to get re-elected in November. He will blame his predecessor, Democrat Joe Biden, for the weakness of the economy. Trump considers the growth of Wall Street, private sector investments, and tax cut legislation as proof that he has helped the economy. The president will also promote his tough immigration policy and deportation campaign, despite polls showing that most Americans believe ICE's actions have gone too far. At the same time, the Democrats have already announced that they will boycott Donald Trump's address and hold their own rallies on the National Mall. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson said it is a disgrace that some Democrats are skipping President Trump's State of the Union address to Congress today. It's important to note that I'm emphasizing Johnson's statement that this is a disgrace, and I'll explain why a bit later. Plus, Mike Johnson announced that instead, the American hockey team, which recently defeated the Canadians, will attend the address to Congress, which recently defeated the Canadians. And then there's a quote from Mike Johnson. It's a disgrace that the Democrats are boycotting the speeches. Republicans don't do that. It doesn't matter who the president is. We from the opposition party don't walk out without warning. It doesn't matter how many small gatherings they organize, where they stand, or how loud their microphones are. They have nothing to offer. And right here, I'll point out that Mike Johnson is being very dishonest. It's better not to throw around such loud statements because some Republicans from the House of Representatives and the Senate in different years did not attend former President Joe Biden's speeches, and some even caused disruptions during his address. But Mike Johnson says that Republicans don't act like that. And finally, I'll note that last year, Donald Trump's speech lasted exactly 100 minutes and became the longest presidential address to Congress in modern history. According to White House staff, when preparing the current address, the speechwriters allowed for the possibility of improvisation, but did not rule out that the address would once again be very, very lengthy. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to give it a like. If you found this episode interesting and useful, you can support the work of this YouTube channel financially. You can make a donation or subscribe using the links and details in the description of this video or by scanning the QR code on your screen. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye. Subtitles by Dima Tozok.